The security camera footage was crystal clear. Marcus Williams draining his own pool at 3 a.m., wearing nothing but swim trunks and determination. But when Karen Hutchinson saw it the next morning, she didn't see a man cleaning his property. She saw a thief stealing 15,000 gallons of her water. What started as a simple pool maintenance turned into a neighborhood war that would expose secrets, shatter lives, and prove that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one living right next door. Because when Karen called 911 screaming about theft, she had no idea she was about to trigger a chain of events that would destroy everything she'd built her perfect life upon. The pool pump's mechanical whir cut through the pre-dawn silence like a mechanical heartbeat, steady and relentless. Marcus Williams stood at the edge of his kidney-shaped swimming pool, watching the water level drop inch by inch as the industrial pump he'd rented worked its magic. The underwater lights cast an eerie blue glow across his backyard, turning everything ethereal and strange. 3 in the morning wasn't exactly prime time for pool maintenance, but Marcus had his reasons. The algae bloom had taken hold during the recent heat wave, turning his once pristine water into something resembling green soup. His daughter Emma was coming home from college next week, and he'd be damned if she'd have to swim in that mess. Besides, the night shift at the manufacturing plant had trained him to be comfortable with odd hours. Sleep had become a luxury he rarely indulged in since the divorce anyway. The pump coughed and sputtered as it reached the shallow end, and Marcus shut it off. 15,000 gallons of contaminated water now sat in a massive puddle in the street, slowly making its way toward the storm drains. Not exactly environmentally friendly, but sometimes you had to make tough choices. He was coiling the thick drainage hose when the porch light next door flickered on. Marcus glanced up to see a silhouette in the window. Karen Hutchinson, his neighbor, of 3 years, peering through her pristine white curtains. Even in shadow, he could sense her disapproval radiating through the glass like heat from a furnace. Karen Hutchinson was what his ex-wife had called aggressively perfect. Every blade of grass on her lawn was precisely trimmed. Every flower in her garden bloomed in coordinated colors. Every morning at exactly 6:30 a.m., she emerged from her house wearing workout clothes that looked like they'd been pressed by a professional. Her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail that never dared to have a strand out of place. She was also the self-appointed guardian of Maple Street's property values, a role she took as seriously as a Supreme Court justice took constitutional law. Marcus waved half-heartedly at the window. The silhouette didn't wave back. "Whatever," he muttered, hauling the heavy pump toward his garage. "It's my pool, my property, my problem." He had no way of knowing that Karen was already reaching for her phone. By 7 a.m., Marcus was showered, caffeinated, and settling into his home office for a day of remote work when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, he saw 2 uniformed police officers standing on his porch, their expressions professionally neutral. "Mr. Williams?" The taller officer, a woman with steel-gray hair and tired eyes, held up her badge. "I'm Officer Rodriguez. This is Officer Chen. We need to ask you a few questions about some water theft that was reported this morning." "Water theft?" Marcus blinked, genuinely confused. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your neighbor filed a complaint stating that you stole water from her property last night." Officer Chen consulted his notepad. "Approximately 15,000 gallons, according to her estimate." Marcus stared at them for a long moment, waiting for the punchline. When none came, he laughed, a short, sharp bark of disbelief. "Are you serious? I drained my own pool, on my own property, with water that I pay for." "Sir, we're just following up on the complaint," Rodriguez said patiently. "Can you walk us through what happened?" Marcus led them to his backyard, gesturing at the empty pool. The concrete basin looked naked and vulnerable without its blanket of water, like a secret suddenly exposed to sunlight. "Algae bloom," he explained. "The whole thing turned green last week. I had to drain it completely and start over. You can see the stains on the walls where the algae was. Officer Chen knelt by the pool edge, examining the telltale green marks. Why did you do it at 3 a.m.? Because I work weird hours, and I wanted to get it done before my daughter comes home from college. Marcus crossed his arms. Look, I don't understand what the problem is. This is my pool, on my property. I can drain it whenever I want. The complainant says you diverted water from her property, Rodriguez read from her notes. She claims you had some kind of hose running from her yard to yours. Marcus felt his jaw drop. That's insane. The hose was connected to my pool pump, draining my water into the street. At no point was I anywhere near her property. The officers exchanged a look that Marcus couldn't interpret. Would you mind if we spoke to your neighbor to get her side of the story? Chen asked. Be my guest, Marcus said, waving toward Karen's house. But I'm telling you, she's wrong. I didn't take a single drop of water from anyone. As the officers walked toward Karen's front door, Marcus felt a knot forming in his stomach. He'd lived next to Karen for 3 years, and while they'd never been close friends, their interactions had always been cordial, professional. Why would she accuse him of theft when she could have simply asked what he was doing? The answer came 20 minutes later when the officers returned, their expressions noticeably different. Mr. Williams, Rodriguez said carefully, your neighbor has security footage that she says shows you taking water from her property. What? Marcus felt the ground shift beneath his feet. That's impossible. She's provided us with several hours of video from last night, Chen added. We're going to need to review it, and we may need to take a statement from you downtown. Downtown? The knot in Marcus's stomach tightened into a fist. Am I under arrest? Not at this time, Rodriguez said. But theft of utilities is a serious charge, Mr. Williams. If the evidence supports the complaint, we'll need to pursue this further. Marcus watched them leave, his mind reeling. Security footage? The only camera he'd seen was the small one mounted above Karen's front door. And that couldn't possibly capture his backyard. Unless... He walked to the property line, studying the 8-foot privacy fence that separated his yard from Karen's. There, barely visible through a gap in the wooden slats, was a small black lens pointing directly at his pool. Karen Hutchinson had been watching him, recording him. But why? The answer came at 2 p.m. in the form of a certified letter delivered by a process server who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. Marcus Williams? The man held out an official-looking envelope. You've been served. Marcus signed for the document with trembling fingers, his mind already racing ahead to worst-case scenarios. Theft charges, criminal court. His daughter finding out her father was accused of stealing water, like some kind of common criminal. He tore open the envelope and began to read. It wasn't a criminal complaint. It was a civil lawsuit. Karen Hutchinson versus Marcus Williams, seeking damages in the amount of $50,000 for theft of water utilities, property damage, and emotional distress. Marcus read the document 3 times before the full scope of Karen's accusations sank in. According to the lawsuit, he hadn't just stolen her water, he'd allegedly done it repeatedly over the course of 2 years using sophisticated equipment to siphon water from her outdoor spigots and causing severe financial hardship and emotional trauma. The most damning allegation was that he'd been running a systematic theft operation, selling the stolen water to local swimming pool companies at a profit. This is insane, Marcus said aloud, his voice echoing in the empty house. This is completely insane. But as he reread the document, a horrible realization began to dawn on him. Karen hadn't just filed a random complaint with the police. This lawsuit was detailed, comprehensive, and professionally prepared. She'd been planning this for weeks, maybe months. The question was why? Marcus grabbed his laptop and began researching water theft laws in his state. What he found made his blood run cold. If convicted, he could face up to 3 years in prison and fines of up to $100,000. Even if he wasn't convicted, the legal fees alone could bankrupt him. His phone rang, interrupting his research. The caller ID showed his ex-wife's number. "Hello, Sarah." "Marcus, what the hell is going on?" Sarah's voice was sharp with panic. "Emma just called me crying, saying someone posted on Facebook that you're being sued for stealing water. She saw it at school and her friends are asking questions." Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the walls closing in around him. "It's complicated." Complicated. "Marcus, our daughter is mortified. She's asking if she should even come home next week, because she doesn't want to deal with the neighborhood gossip." "Sarah, I didn't steal anything. My neighbor is lying, and I don't know why, but I don't care why." Sarah's voice cracked. "I care that our daughter is humiliated and scared, and you need to fix this, now." The line went dead. Marcus set the phone down and stared at the lawsuit again, focusing on one particular line buried in the dense legal text. "Defendant has systematically and willfully deprived plaintiff of water resources essential to the maintenance of her property and livelihood." Livelihood. He walked to his front window and looked out at. He'd dragged a lawn chair down into the deep end at midnight, surrounded himself with boxes of documents, and worked by the light of his phone's flashlight until dawn. The concrete walls felt like a bunker, protecting him from Karen's surveillance, while he methodically dissected 8 years of her business records. What he found made his stomach turn. Karen hadn't just been stealing water. She'd been stealing lives. The first victim was Mrs. Chen, an elderly widow 3 streets over whose water bills had mysteriously tripled in 2019. According to the city records Marcus had obtained through a public information request, Mrs. Chen had called the water department 17 times in 6 months, claiming someone was using her water without permission. Each time, a city inspector had found no evidence of tampering and suggested she might have a leak. Mrs. Chen had died in 2020. The obituary mentioned she'd been forced to sell her home due to unexpected financial hardship. The second victim was the Morrison family on Oak Street. Their water usage had spiked dramatically in 2021, coinciding with Karen's expansion into commercial landscaping for 3 new housing developments. The Morrisons had filed complaints with the city, hired private investigators, and eventually sued the water department for billing errors. They'd lost the lawsuit and moved to Arizona to live with relatives. Marcus found 7 more families with similar stories, all elderly or financially vulnerable, all living on streets where Karen had purchased water rights or easements, all driven out of their homes by water bills they couldn't afford and couldn't explain. And in every case, Karen had been there at the end, offering to buy their properties at below-market rates to help them out of their financial difficulties. She wasn't just stealing water. She was using water theft to drive out homeowners and buy their properties cheap. Then she was using those properties as bases for her irrigation network, creating a shadow water system that fed her landscaping empire while the victims paid the bills. It was brilliant. It was systematic. And it was utterly ruthless. Marcus's phone rang at 6 a.m. The caller ID showed his lawyer's number. "David?" "Marcus, we have a problem." David Chen. No relation to the deceased Mrs. Chen sounded exhausted. "I just got off the phone with the prosecutor's office. They're filing criminal charges. Grand theft, fraud, and conspiracy to commit theft of utilities." Marcus felt the concrete walls of the pool seem to close in around him. Based on what evidence? They won't tell me specifics, but apparently Karen Hutchinson provided additional documentation overnight. Video footage from multiple angles, financial records showing irregular deposits to your bank account, and witness testimony from 3 neighbors who say they saw you running hoses between properties. That's impossible. Marcus, they have a witness who claims to have seen you selling water to pool maintenance companies out of a truck parked in your driveway. Marcus's blood turned to ice water. Who? They won't say. But whoever it is, they're willing to testify under oath. Marcus closed his eyes, his mind racing through the possibilities. 3 neighbors willing to lie for Karen. financial records showing deposits he'd never made, video footage that somehow captured crimes he'd never committed. David, she's framing me. All of this is fabricated. Then we need to prove it. Fast. The arraignment is scheduled for Thursday. If we don't have a solid defense by then, the judge is going to set bail so high you'll be sitting in county lockup until trial. After hanging up, Marcus climbed out of his pool and stood in his backyard, looking at the neighborhood with new eyes. How many of his neighbors were involved in Karen's scheme? How many had been bought, threatened, or simply convinced that he was guilty? The answer came sooner than expected. At 8 a.m., Marcus was making coffee when he saw Tom Rodriguez from 2 doors down walking up his driveway. Tom was a good guy, a retired firefighter who'd always been friendly, always ready to lend a hand or share a beer on Friday evenings. But when Marcus opened the door, Tom's expression was cold and hostile. "I want you to know, I think what you did is despicable," Tom said without preamble. "Taking advantage of Karen like that. She's a good woman trying to make an honest living." "Tom, whatever you think you know." "I know what I saw," Tom interrupted. 3 weeks ago, Thursday night around midnight, you had a hose running from Karen's spigot to that big truck you rented. I saw you filling up plastic containers and loading them in the back." Marcus stared at him, speechless. 3 weeks ago. Thursday, he'd been working a double shift at the plant. He had time cards to prove it. And he'd never rented a truck in his life. "That never happened," Marcus said quietly. "Tom, I was at work that night. I can prove it." "Karen said you'd deny it," Tom replied. "She said you've been gaslighting her for months, making her think she was crazy when she noticed her water bills going up. That's psychological abuse, Marcus. I've seen it before." "Tom, listen to me." But Tom was already walking away. "Don't come to any more neighborhood barbecues," he called over his shoulder. "You're not welcome." Marcus closed the door and leaned against it, his heart pounding. Karen hadn't just fabricated evidence. She'd created an entire alternative timeline, complete with witnesses who genuinely believed they'd seen him commit crimes. The question was, how many people was she controlling? And how far was she willing to go to protect her secret? The answer came at noon in the form of his daughter. Emma Williams stood on his doorstep looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her dark hair hung limp around her face, and her usually bright eyes were red with exhaustion. "And tears, Dad?" Her voice was small and uncertain, like she was 8 years old again and afraid of the monster under her bed. Marcus pulled her into his arms, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo and feeling some of the tension leave his body for the first time in days. "Hey, kiddo, I thought you weren't coming home until next week. I couldn't concentrate on finals." Emma pulled back and studied his face. "Dad, is it true? Did you really steal water from the neighbor?" Marcus led her to the kitchen table and sat down across from her, choosing his words carefully. "No, Emma. I didn't steal anything from anyone, but someone wants people to think I did." "The police came to campus," Emma said quietly. "They asked questions about you, about our finances, about whether you'd been acting strange lately, about whether you'd ever talked about money problems." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "What did you tell them?" "I told them the truth. That you've been stressed since the divorce, that money's been tight, but that you're not a thief." Emma's voice cracked. "But Dad, they had pictures." "Pictures?" Emma pulled out her phone and showed him a series of photographs. Marcus recognized his own backyard, his own pool, his own late-night drainage operation. But these photos had been taken from an angle that made it look like the hose was connected to Karen's property. The lighting was adjusted to obscure details, and the timestamps showed dates going back months. "Karen Hutchinson gave these to the police," Emma said. "She told them you've been stealing her water for over a year." Marcus studied the photos more carefully. They were expertly manipulated, not photoshopped, but staged and lit to create a false impression. Someone with professional photography skills had spent considerable time and effort creating fake evidence. "Emma, I need you to listen to me very carefully," Marcus said. "I did not steal water from anyone. These photos are fake. Karen Hutchinson is lying, and she's very good at it." But why would she lie? Marcus considered how much to tell his daughter. Emma was smart, a senior at state studying criminal justice, but she was also young and had never encountered the kind of calculated evil that Karen represented. "Because she's the one who's been stealing," Marcus said finally. "And she needed someone to blame." Emma was quiet for a long moment, studying the photos. "Dad, if you're innocent, then we need to prove it. And if she's guilty, we need to prove that too." "Emma, this is dangerous. Karen has already destroyed multiple families. She's not going to hesitate to hurt you if she thinks you're a threat." "Then we better make sure she doesn't see us coming," Emma said, and Marcus heard steel in her voice that reminded him of her mother. "Dad, I'm studying criminal justice. I know how investigations work. I know how evidence gets collected, and I know how innocent people get framed. If Karen thinks she can destroy our family, she's about to learn she picked the wrong target." By evening, Emma had transformed Marcus's living room into a war room. She'd covered every wall with charts, timelines, photographs, and documents. Red string connected various pieces of evidence, creating a web that looked like something from a conspiracy thriller. "Karen's been planning this for at least 18 months, Emma explained, pointing to a timeline she'd constructed. "Look at the pattern. Every time she expands her business into a new area, someone in that neighborhood starts having water problems. Then Karen swoops in with offers to help." "Help how?" "She buys their houses," Emma said, "always at below market value, always when they're desperate. Then she uses those properties as staging areas for her irrigation network." Marcus studied the timeline. "But why frame me? My house isn't for sale." "Because you were getting too close to the truth," Emma said. "Look at this." She pulled up Marcus's bank statements on her laptop. "You've been tracking your water usage obsessively." Not about college. She really was studying criminal justice at state. Not about her grades. She really was graduating with honors next month. But about what she'd been doing during those long summer internships she claimed were with the district attorney's office. Emma had been working for Blackwater Investigations, one of the most elite private detective agencies on the East Coast. At 19, she'd started as a researcher, using her natural talent for data analysis and her complete lack of respect for privacy laws to help wealthy clients destroy their enemies. By 21, she'd been running her own cases: corporate espionage, insurance fraud, missing persons with seven-figure bounties. She was very good at finding people who didn't want to be found. She was even better at making people disappear who needed to disappear. Karen Hutchinson was about to discover just how good. Tuesday night at 11 p.m., Emma sat in her rental car 3 blocks from Karen's house, watching the target through military-grade night vision equipment. She'd spent the day conducting surveillance, mapping Karen's routine, identifying security weaknesses, and confirming what she already suspected. Karen Hutchinson lived alone, had no pets, kept irregular hours, and suffered from chronic insomnia. That had her moving around the house until well past midnight most nights. More importantly, Karen was sloppy about digital security. Her Wi-Fi password was Hutchinson Design 2019. Her home security system was a basic ADT package that could be disabled with a $30 RF jammer. And she'd made the classic amateur mistake of using the same laptop for both personal communications and business operations. Emma waited until Karen's bedroom light went out at 11:47 p.m., then gave it another 30 minutes to be safe. At 12:17 a.m., she moved. The back gate was locked, but Emma had been picking locks since she was 12. Her grandfather, Marcus's father, had been a locksmith before he retired, and he'd taught her the trade as a hobby. She'd never told him, She'd gotten so good at it that she could break into most residential properties in under 2 minutes. Karen's back door took 90 seconds. The house was dark and silent as Emma made her way through the kitchen and into Karen's home office. She'd memorized the floor plan from county records and knew exactly where she was going. The hardest part was moving quietly on Karen's hardwood floors while carrying 40 pounds of surveillance and hacking equipment. But Emma had done this before. Many times. Karen's laptop was password protected, but Emma had brought tools that made that irrelevant. She connected a USB device that would copy the entire hard drive while simultaneously installing monitoring software that would capture every keystroke, every email, and every file access going forward. While the data copied, Emma placed micro cameras in 3 strategic locations throughout the house. The devices were smaller than shirt buttons and virtually undetectable unless you knew exactly where to look. They would provide full audio and video coverage of Karen's daily activities, including phone conversations and computer usage. The hardest part was accessing Karen's business files, which were stored in a fireproof safe in the bedroom closet. But Emma had come prepared for that too. The electronic lock was a standard commercial model that could be defeated with the right equipment and enough patience. Inside the safe, Emma found evidence that made her sick to her stomach. Karen hadn't just been stealing water and manipulating property values. She'd been blackmailing people. The files contained photographs, financial records, medical information, and personal correspondence belonging to dozens of people throughout the county. Politicians, business owners, community leaders, anyone who might pose a threat to her operations or could be useful for expanding them. Mrs. Chen, the elderly widow who died after being forced from her home, had been targeted because she'd once been a city water inspector. Karen had orchestrated her financial destruction specifically to prevent her from recognizing the illegal taps that were draining municipal resources. The Morrison family had been driven out because Mr. Morrison was a civil engineer who specialized in municipal water systems. Karen had discovered he was planning to volunteer his expertise to help the city modernize its infrastructure. 7 other families had been destroyed for similar reasons, each one eliminated because they possessed knowledge or connections that could threaten Karen's empire. But the most disturbing file was labeled Insurance Policies. Emma photographed every page, her hands shaking as she read. Karen had been collecting leverage on people for years, building a network of controlled assets who could provide alibis, false testimony, or fabricated evidence whenever she needed. Tom Rodriguez, the retired firefighter who'd accused Marcus of theft, was being blackmailed over gambling debts he'd hidden from his wife. City Councilwoman Patricia Hayes was being controlled through photographs of an extramarital affair. Water Department Supervisor Michael Chang was compromised by evidence of kickbacks. From municipal contractors, even Emma's own lawyer, David Chen, was listed in the files. Karen had discovered that he'd been skimming money from his client trust accounts to cover losses from bad investments. Emma realized with growing horror that Karen hadn't just been planning to frame Marcus. She'd been building a network of controlled witnesses and compromised officials who could guarantee conviction regardless of the evidence. The data transfer completed at 2:33 a.m. Emma carefully returned everything to its original position, removed all traces of her presence, and slipped out of the house as silently as she'd entered. But as she reached her car, Emma noticed something that made her blood freeze. A light was on in Karen's bedroom window, and Karen was standing at the window, looking directly at her. Emma didn't panic. Panic got you caught, and getting caught meant failing the client. Instead, she calmly started her car and drove away at normal speed, as if she were just a college student heading home late from a party. But in her rearview mirror, she saw Karen's front door open and Karen step onto the porch, still watching. Emma had been made. By the time she got back to her father's house, Emma's phone was already ringing with calls from unknown numbers. She didn't answer any of them, but she knew what they meant. Karen was activating her network, calling in favors, preparing for war. Emma found Marcus waiting in the kitchen, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Where were you?" he asked. "I've been calling for hours." "Gathering intelligence," Emma said, connecting her camera to her laptop. "Dad, sit down. What I'm about to show you is going to change everything." For the next 3 hours, Emma walked her father through everything she'd discovered. The blackmail files, the controlled witnesses, the systematic destruction of innocent families. By the time she finished, Marcus looked like he'd aged 10 years. "My God," he whispered. "How many people has she destroyed?" "Dozens," Emma said. "Maybe hundreds. And she's not done. Dad, look at this." Emma pulled up a document labeled Final Phase Timeline. According to Karen's own notes, she was planning to liquidate her entire operation within the next 4 weeks. The city infrastructure project would expose her illegal water taps, so she needed to eliminate all evidence and all witnesses before construction began. That included eliminating Marcus permanently. "She's not just planning to frame you," Emma said quietly. "She's planning to have you killed. And she's going to make it look like suicide brought on by guilt and despair over your crimes." Marcus stared at the document. "When?" "Next Tuesday," Emma said. "The day before your arraignment. She's already arranged for someone to find your body and a suicide note confessing to everything." "What suicide note?" Emma showed him another file. Karen had spent weeks crafting a detailed confession in Marcus's handwriting, apparently copied from documents she'd somehow obtained. The note expressed remorse for stealing water, guilt over destroying Karen's business, and despair over disappointing his daughter. "She's been planning this for months," Emma said. "Every move, every piece of evidence, every witness statement, it's all been designed to build toward this moment." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was deadly, calm. "So what do we do?" Emma pulled up another screen on her laptop. "We give her exactly what she wants. I thought we already tried that with the plea deal." "That was misdirection," Emma said. "This is endgame. Dad, Karen thinks she's the only one who knows how to plan ahead. She thinks she's the only one who knows how to manipulate people and fabricate evidence. But she made one crucial mistake." "Which is?" Emma's smile was cold as Arctic wind. "She assumed I was just a college student." Wednesday morning, Emma put her plan into motion. Step 1. She called Karen directly. "Ms. Hutchinson, this is Emma Williams. I think we need to talk." There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Karen spoke, her voice was cautious but interested. "Emma, I'm sorry about what's happening with your father." "That's what I want to discuss," Emma said. "I know he's guilty. I've seen the evidence, and I can't keep pretending he's innocent, but I also can't let him go to prison for 20 years. What are you proposing?" "A trade," Emma said. "I have information about his operation that could help your civil case. Financial records, communication logs, details about how he recruited other people into the scheme, information that would guarantee you collect damages and prove you were the victim, not the perpetrator." She sat in her perfect living room until dawn, staring at the photographs Emma had left behind, her mind racing through calculations that all led to the same impossible conclusion. She was trapped. For 8 years, Karen had been the chess master, always thinking 3 moves ahead, always controlling the board. But Emma Williams had just checkmated her in a single conversation, using weapons Karen hadn't even known existed. The worst part was the elegance of it. Emma hadn't threatened or blustered or made dramatic speeches about justice. She'd simply laid out the facts with the cold precision of a surgeon making an incision. Karen would confess or Karen would be destroyed. Those were the only options. But Karen Hutchinson hadn't built an empire by accepting limited options. At 6 a.m., she made the call that would either save her or damn them all. "Michael, it's Karen. I need a favor." Michael Chang had been taking Karen's money for 3 years, ever since she'd discovered he was skimming from municipal water improvement contracts. The arrangement had been mutually beneficial. Karen got inside information about city infrastructure projects, and Michael got enough cash to cover his gambling debts and his daughter's medical expenses. But the favor Karen was asking for now was different, bigger, more dangerous. "You want me to do what?" Michael's voice was tight with panic. "Shut off water service to the entire Maple Street district," Karen repeated calmly. "Make it look like a main break caused by old infrastructure, something that will require emergency repairs and give you access to all the underground utility lines." "Karen, that's insane. We're talking about cutting water to 300 homes. The city manager will have my head if—" "Michael," Karen's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than shouting. "Remember who has photographs of you with those contractors. Remember who knows about the missing money from the pension fund. Remember who can make sure your daughter never gets that kidney transplant she needs." The line went quiet for a long moment. "What do you need me to do?" Michael asked finally. "I need you to create chaos," Karen said. "Enough chaos to keep everyone distracted while I clean up some loose ends." After hanging up, Karen opened her laptop and began typing the most important email of her life. The subject line read, "Urgent, witness protection required." She was about to activate the nuclear option. Marcus woke up Thursday morning to the sound of his neighbor screaming. He stumbled out of bed and looked out his window to see Tom Rodriguez standing in his yard, staring at a massive crater where his driveway used to be. Water was shooting 20 feet into the air from a broken main line, flooding the street and turning the neighborhood into a disaster zone. "Emma!" Marcus called, but got no response. Her bed was empty, and her car was gone. Marcus grabbed his phone and tried calling her, but the call went straight to voicemail. He tried texting, but the messages wouldn't send. Looking at his phone more carefully, he realized he had no cellular signal at all. Outside, more neighbors were emerging from their homes, all dealing with the same crisis. No water, no phone service, and a massive infrastructure failure that was turning Maple Street into a construction zone. Marcus was getting dressed when he heard heavy footsteps on his porch, followed by loud banging on his front door. "Mr. Williams, FBI, open up!" Marcus opened the door to find 6 federal agents in tactical gear, their weapons drawn and pointed at his chest. "Marcus Williams, you're under arrest for federal racketeering, conspiracy to commit fraud, and terrorism," the lead agent announced. Terrorism. Marcus's mind reeled. "What are you talking about?" "The water main explosion," another agent said, pushing past Marcus into the house. "We have evidence that you sabotaged municipal infrastructure as part of your water theft operation." Marcus felt the ground shift beneath his feet yet again. "That's impossible. I was asleep. I just woke up when I heard the explosion." "Sir, we have video evidence of you placing explosive devices near the water main at 3 a.m. this morning." They showed him footage on a tablet, grainy security camera video that clearly showed a figure in dark clothing planting something near the water main. The figure was the right height and build to be Marcus, and the timestamp showed 3:17 a.m. "That's not me," Marcus said, but even as the words left his mouth, he realized how hollow they sounded. He'd been saying that about evidence for days now, and no one believed him. "Where's your daughter?" the lead agent asked. "I don't know. She was gone when I woke up." The agents exchanged glances. "Mr. Williams, we have reason to believe your daughter may be in danger. We've received credible intelligence that she was planning to expose your operation and that you may have taken steps to silence her." Marcus felt his heart stop. What kind of intelligence? The agent showed him another video. This one showed Emma's car parked outside Karen's house the night before, followed by footage of Emma entering the house carrying what appeared to be a briefcase full of documents. "Your neighbor contacted us last night," the agent explained. "She provided evidence that your daughter had been helping you plan and execute water theft operations throughout the county. But apparently your daughter developed a conscience and threatened to expose everything." "Karen's lying," Marcus said. "Desperately. She's been framing me from the beginning. She's the one who's been stealing water, not me." "Sir, we have your daughter's own confession," the agent said, showing Marcus a typed document. She provided detailed information about your operations, including plans to sabotage city infrastructure to cover your tracks. Marcus read the document with growing horror. It was written in Emma's voice, using her vocabulary and speech patterns, describing a father-daughter criminal enterprise that had been operating for over 2 years. According to the confession, Marcus had recruited Emma to help him steal water and launder the proceeds, but when she tried to back out, he threatened to hurt her if she didn't cooperate. The document ended with a statement that Emma feared for her safety and was cooperating with authorities to bring down her father's operation. "This is fake," Marcus said. "My daughter would never—" "Mr. Williams, your daughter is missing," the agent interrupted. "Her car was found abandoned near the river at dawn. There were signs of a struggle, and her phone was destroyed. We believe you may have harmed her to prevent her from testifying against you." Marcus felt his legs give out. He sank into a chair, staring at the agents as the full scope of Karen's trap became clear. She hadn't just framed him for water theft. She'd created evidence that he was a domestic terrorist who had murdered his own daughter to cover up his crimes. And somehow, she'd made Emma disappear to sell the story. 3 hours later, Marcus sat in a federal holding cell, waiting for his lawyer to arrive and trying to process what had happened. Emma was gone. The FBI believed he'd killed her. The entire neighborhood thought he was a terrorist who'd sabotaged the water system and caused millions of dollars in damage. And somewhere out there, Karen Hutchinson was probably celebrating the complete destruction of his life. Marcus was still, staring at the concrete walls when a guard approached his cell. "Williams, you've got a visitor." Marcus expected to see David Chen, but instead found himself facing a woman he'd never seen before. She was middle-aged, professionally dressed, and carried herself with the authority of someone used to being in charge. "Mr. Williams, I'm Special Agent Sarah Mitchell, FBI Financial Crimes Unit. I need to ask you some questions about your daughter." "I already told the other agents everything I know," Marcus said wearily. "Emma's missing. I didn't hurt her, and I didn't sabotage any water mains." "Mr. Williams, I'm not here about the terrorism charges," Agent Mitchell said, sitting down across from him. "I'm here because your daughter contacted me 3 days ago." Marcus looked up sharply. "What?" "Emma Williams called my direct line Monday afternoon. She said she was a private investigator working on a federal case involving organized fraud and racketeering. She requested a meeting to provide evidence about a criminal operation being run out of your neighborhood." Marcus felt hope flicker in his chest for the first time in days. "What did she tell you?" "She said she had documentation, proving that a local businesswoman had been running a systematic theft and extortion scheme for over 8 years. She claimed to have evidence of fraud, blackmail, money laundering, and murder." "Murder? The death of Eleanor Chen in 2020, Agent Mitchell said. "Your daughter believed Mrs. Chen was killed to prevent her from exposing illegal water taps that were draining city resources." Marcus leaned forward. "Did you meet with Emma?" "We scheduled a meeting for yesterday evening," Agent Mitchell said. "She never showed up, but this morning, someone delivered a package to my office containing copies of all the evidence she'd promised to provide." Agent Mitchell opened a briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of documents. Marcus recognized them immediately. They were copies of everything Emma had shown him from Karen's files. "Mr. Williams, based on the evidence your daughter provided, we've been conducting our own investigation into Karen Hutchinson's activities. What we've found corroborates everything in your daughter's report." "Then you know I'm innocent?" "We know that you're not the primary target of this investigation," Agent Mitchell said carefully. "The charges against you appear to be part of an elaborate frame job designed to—" Karen Hutchinson had 3 seconds to live or die when she heard her father's voice. Not literally. Harold Hutchinson had been dead for 12 years. But in that moment of ultimate decision, with federal agents closing in and Emma Williams watching, her with those cold, calculating eyes, Karen heard the words her father had whispered to her on his deathbed. Sometimes the only way to win is to make sure everyone else loses too. Karen raised the gun, not at Emma, at herself. But before she could pull the trigger, the warehouse doors exploded inward in a symphony of splintered wood, smoke, and shouting voices. Federal agents flooded the room like a black tide, their weapons trained, their movements precise and coordinated. FBI, drop your weapon! Get on the ground now! Suspect is armed! Karen spun toward the voices, the gun still in her hand, and for one terrible moment Emma thought she was going to force the agents to kill her rather than face what was coming. Instead, Karen did something that surprised everyone in the room. She laughed. It wasn't the bitter laugh of defeat or the hysterical laugh of madness. It was the genuine laugh of someone who had just realized the punchline to a very long, very elaborate joke. "You want to know the really funny part?" Karen said, addressing Emma while keeping the gun pointed at the ceiling. "I was already planning to leave. Tonight. I had a plane waiting, new identity documents, enough money to disappear forever. All of this, framing your father, kidnapping you, this whole dramatic confrontation, it was completely unnecessary." "Then why did you do it?" Emma asked. Karen's smile was sad and strange, and entirely too human for the monster Emma had built her up to be in her mind. "Because I wanted someone to know how good I was at it," Karen said quietly. 8 years of perfect crimes, and the only person who ever figured it out was a 21-year-old college student. I guess I needed to prove I was smarter than that. "Drop the weapon!" the lead agent shouted again. Karen looked around the room at the tactical team, at Emma still tied to the chair, at the wreckage of her carefully constructed life. "My real name is Catherine Kowalski," she said conversationally. "I killed my first husband in 1987 by poisoning his insulin. I killed my second husband in 1994 by tampering with his car brakes. I killed Eleanor Chen by destroying her financially because she was getting too close to discovering my water theft operation. I've committed fraud in 11 states, stolen approximately $2.3 million in municipal resources, and destroyed the lives of 47 families." She set the gun on the floor and raised her hands above her head. And Emma Williams figured. "It all out in 18 months, Karen continued as agents moved in to restrain her. "I have to admit, I'm impressed." As the agents cuffed Karen and began reading her rights, she looked back at Emma one final time. "You're good at this," Karen said. "Maybe too good. Be careful you don't become what you're hunting." Then she was gone, led away by federal agents who would spend the next several months untangling the web of crimes she'd confessed to in those final moments. Emma sat in her chair, still bound, watching the aftermath unfold around her. She should have felt victorious. Justice had been served, her father was vindicated, and the families Karen had destroyed would finally get some measure of closure. Instead, Emma felt hollow, empty, like she'd won a game that hadn't been worth playing in the first place. Special Agent Mitchell approached and began cutting through the ropes binding Emma's wrists. "Are you injured?" Mitchell asked. "No," Emma said, rubbing circulation back into her hands. "I'm fine. Your father is waiting." "Outside," Mitchell said. "He's been through hell these past few days." Emma nodded, but didn't move from the chair immediately. She was thinking about Karen's final words, about the look in her eyes when she confessed to multiple murders, about the strange sadness in her voice when she talked about wanting someone to recognize how good she'd been at destroying lives. "Agent Mitchell," Emma said quietly, "how many cases like this are there? How many Karen Hutchinsons are out there right now, systematically destroying people for profit?" Mitchell paused in packing up her equipment. "More than you'd want to know. About. And how many of them get caught? Not enough," Mitchell admitted. "Emma, what you did here was extraordinary. Most people would have never seen through Karen's facade, let alone built a case strong enough to bring her down. You saved lives." Emma finally stood up, her legs unsteady after hours in the chair. "But I only caught her because she got careless, because she decided to target my family. How many others like her are operating right now, And we don't even know they exist? Mitchell didn't have an answer for that. Outside the warehouse, Marcus Williams waited beside an FBI vehicle, chain-smoking cigarettes even though he'd quit 3 years earlier. When Emma emerged from the building, he dropped the cigarette and crushed her in a hug that lifted her feet off the ground. "I thought I'd lost you," he whispered into her hair. "I'm okay, Dad," Emma said, but her voice was muffled and distant. They stood like that for a long moment, father and daughter holding each other in the parking lot of an abandoned warehouse, while federal agents processed evidence and loaded Karen Hutchinson into a transport vehicle. "Agent Mitchell told me what you did," Marcus said when he finally released her. "Emma, you saved my life. You saved both our lives." "I did my job," Emma said simply. Marcus studied his daughter's face. Something was wrong. Emma looked like she'd won a victory, but there was no joy in her expression, no satisfaction, just exhaustion and something that looked almost like disappointment. "Talk to me," Marcus said. "What's going on in your head?" Emma was quiet for a long moment, watching as Karen's transport vehicle disappeared into the distance. "Dad, do you remember when I was 8 and I found that injured bird in our backyard?" Marcus frowned at the apparent non-sequitur. "The robin with the broken wing? You helped me build a splint for it," Emma continued. "We fed it and cared for it for 3 weeks until it could fly again. And when we released it, I cried because I was going to miss taking care of it. I remember." "That bird had been attacked by a cat," Emma said. "A neighborhood cat that had been killing birds all summer. And when we released our robin, I knew the cat was still out there. I knew it would probably kill more birds, but we just released our bird and pretended the problem was solved." Marcus began to understand where this was going. "Emma, what you did here?" "What I did here was catch one cat," Emma interrupted. "But there are hundreds of cats out there, Dad. Thousands. And most of them are smarter than Karen was. Most of them won't get careless and target a private investigator's family." They walked toward Marcus's car in silence. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that reminded Emma of the algae-choked water her father had drained from their pool just a week ago. Had it really only been a week? It felt like months. "So what are you going to do?" Marcus asked as they reached the car. Emma looked back at the warehouse one final time, then at her father. "I'm going to quit school," she said. "Emma, I'm going to work for Blackwater full-time," she continued. "I'm going to hunt people like Karen Hutchinson for a living. I'm good at it, Dad. Maybe too good. But someone has to do it." Marcus unlocked the car but didn't get in immediately. "Is that what you want? Or is that what you think you have to do?" "I don't know," Emma said honestly. "But I know that 3 days ago Karen Hutchinson was planning to have you killed and make it look like suicide. I know that without intervention, she would have kept destroying families until the day she died. And I know that there are people just like her operating right now in every city in the country, and most of them will never be caught. But Emma, you're 21 years old. You should be worried about finals and graduation and what you're going to do with your life, not this." Emma smiled for the first time in days, and Marcus was relieved to see some warmth return to her expression. "Dad, normal 21-year-olds don't infiltrate criminal operations and build federal cases against serial killers. I stopped being normal the first time I picked a lock to help a client." They got in the car and began the drive home. The radio was playing classic rock, and Marcus turned it up to fill the comfortable silence between them. "Are you proud of me?" Emma asked as they pulled into their neighborhood. Marcus looked at his daughter, brilliant, determined, dangerous, and absolutely fearless when it came to protecting the people she loved. "I'm terrified of you," Marcus said honestly. "But yes, I'm proud of you." 3 months later, Emma Williams sat in her new office at Blackwater Investigations, reviewing case files and drinking coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Through her window, she could see the city skyline, And somewhere out there, she knew there were people like Karen Hutchinson operating in the shadows. Her computer chimed with a new email. The subject line read, "Potential case, systematic elder, abuse." Emma opened the email and began reading. A retirement community in Virginia, residents dying under suspicious circumstances, financial irregularities, families being pushed out by unexplained debt. It sounded familiar. Emma picked up her phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. Blackwater Investigations, this is Emma Williams. How can I help you? Ms. Williams, my name is Robert Chen. I think someone is stealing from my mother's retirement home, and I think they may have killed my aunt to cover it up. Emma,